Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to Chairman Smith. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of H.R. 9495, the bill titled the Stop Terror Financing and Tax Penalties on American Hostages Act. I'm proud that it's a bipartisan bill, and in my opinion, it will make much-needed improvements to our tax code. I also do want to thank my colleagues, Representative Claudia Tenney from New York, Brad Snyder from Illinois, and Dina Titus from Nevada for joining me in introducing this legislation. And I do want to thank Chairman Jason Smith for his strong support and leadership with this bill. Mr. Speaker, today, right now, there are American citizens being held captive by terrorist groups and foreign adversaries. Under our current law, Americans who've been detained illegally abroad may be subject to certain tax penalties and IRS fees. It is our responsibility to bring these Americans home and, frankly, to fix this unacceptable flaw in the federal tax code. The last thing that Americans should have to deal with is more government tape and bureaucracy. H.R. 9495 also works to prevent tax abuse in our tax code. Since the horrific attack on Israel by Hamas, the Ways and Means Committee has investigated terror groups and bad actors that threaten the U.S. and our allies. One finding, Mr. Speaker, which should enrage all of us, is that there are tax-exempt nonprofits operating in the United States despite being suspected of providing support to terrorist groups such as Hamas. More recently, and I'm using this term in quotes, a journalist working for a publication called the Palestine Chronicle, which is part of a 501c3 tax-exempt organization based in the U.S., he was discovered holding Israeli hostages in his Gaza home. This is unacceptable. The financing of terrorism and extremism should not have preferential treatment under the U.S. tax code. I think this should be a no-brainer. This legislation will revoke the tax-exempt status of any organization found to have provided, here are the key words, material support or resources to a designated terrorist group within the past 3 years. I do want to note that this part of the bill was originally considered on this floor on April 15th of this year under Bill number 6408, H.R. 6408. The language in H.R. 6408 affecting these tax-exempt groups is the same language in the legislation that we're considering today. It did pass by a vote of 382 in favor to 11 against, which I think in the current political atmosphere is pretty remarkable. I also appreciate that there are a number of people who are speaking against this bill today who voted in favor of this bill, the former bill, H.R. 6408, on April 15th of this year. Obviously, a vote of 382 in favor and 11 against shows the resounding support of this body. And if there are any due process concerns, which we've been hearing about this morning, they existed in that bill on April the 15th, and yet there were only 11 people who voted no. I was glad to see this common sense legislation unanimously pass out of the Ways and Means Committee. Chairman Smith, in his remarks, termed it as common sense, and that's exactly what it is. So, Mr. Speaker, for all these reasons, I strongly urge my colleagues to support this important piece of legislation today. And with that, I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman.